This is the Landlord Survival Show. When people stop being nice and shit gets real. You're the landlord. We're here to help. This is the show for what the gurus don't tell you about owning rentals. We're here for you because we're stronger together.
Brought to you by Empire Industries Property Management. Built for investors, by investors.
Hey everyone, well welcome to the Landlord Survival Show. This is Steve Rosenberg, I'm your host, and we just recently started doing these live on the air, and we've had a great response to people watching the show. Basically what we're doing is we've created the show. Pete and I very simply have gotten our butts kicked over the last probably 15 years of owning houses, owning apartments, flipping properties. And one of the reasons we found out, we realized that this happened, is we just had a lot of people steer us in the wrong direction. And I don't know if they did it on purpose, or I don't know if they had their own intentions. I don't really know, and I don't really care. At the end of the day, a lot of people made money and I didn't. And I found out the reason a lot of people made money and I didn't is they had goals and I didn't. Maybe their goals were to just make money off of me and move on. I don't know. But as Pete and I grew the company, we grew Empire. We untangled ourselves out of owning a lot of bad deals and learned a lot of lessons. One of the things that we realized is we needed to come up with strategies to own properties. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there that have strategies on how to buy them, how to flip them, how to get a hold of them, how to get the deal. But nobody really has the strategy of how to actually manage the property to get you the return. Because if you're flipping properties, I found out personally that was just a job. It could be a high-paying job. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is just a job. And I didn't want just a job. I wanted something that was passive income with wealth, but nobody actually taught what do you do when the tenant, you put in doesn't, pan out? How do you get them out? How do you evict them? What is Texas property code here in Texas? Wherever you live, there's other codes, obviously. And no one ever talks about that part. Maybe it's because it's not the fast, sexy part. And so we ended up creating a Facebook group, Landlord Survival Show, or Landlord Survival Group on Facebook. So if you're not a member, go join that. A lot of free information on there, a lot of good conversations, as well as we do this show. It's on iTunes. You can download it, like it, share it, please. This is something that I do just to give back to the investing community because I don't think enough people do that. So what I want to talk about today, very, very clean and clear, is the challenges that we all have when you put a tenant in the property and that tenant turns out to be, I don't know if we want to say a loser, I don't know if we want to say isn't maybe lied, I don't know what you call it, but isn't as advertised, right? Their resume said one thing and they turned out to be something else. And from personal experience, I was the kind of guy that was ready, shoot, aim. And what I mean by that is I would put anybody in the property. I would advertise bad credit okay. I would advertise rent special. I would advertise all the things that would attract the worst kinds of tenants. And we would have people that would literally drive up with their stuff in their car saying, I can move in right now. Where's my deposit special? And we thought, man, we cracked the code. This was a great thing. They move in, never said anything was wrong with the property, didn't hear from them, actually never heard from them again because they either left 3 weeks later when rent was actually due, or they stayed in and we had to evict them and we had to deal with, paupers affidavits and squatters' rights and all that kind of stuff. And that's when we started realizing that maybe our thinking was flawed. And the flaw in our thinking was that we had no structure and we had no criteria. And I learned after a couple of very hard lessons that you put the wrong person in and your life is horrible. I mean, when I say horrible, I mean like can't sleep. I think at the time, Pete and I maybe had 35, 40 houses, and we had 35, 40 bad people. And that's a very bad feeling. And I don't know if anyone's had that feeling before, but it's definitely not where you want to be. So we ended up meeting our good friend here in the funny suit. We'll talk to him about the suit in a minute, but we met Jason Waggoner with ACUTRAQ. I'm going to say, Jason, about 4 years ago? What?
Maybe even longer than that, probably around 6 years ago.
6 years ago. So it was about at the inception when Pete and I realized that what we were doing for our personal properties probably was not going to work if we wanted to start a business of managing properties. And that was kind of the start. And so what we did from there is we created a relationship with Jason and we tried to say, okay, what what is the perfect client that would stop our problems and make our lives easier? Because basically what we were doing is we were taking other people's problems, their renters, and putting them into our properties that we were managing. And now these people's problems became our problems, which became our owners' problems, which became a whole other mess of problems. And we didn't want that. I didn't want the stress. I didn't want to deal with it. I knew there was good tenants out there, but I could not figure out how to find them. And the stress of headache of trying to figure out who's good and who's not good. So Jason, thanks for coming today. I appreciate it, buddy.
Always a pleasure to come on, Steve. Appreciate you having me.
So tell everyone kind of a little bit, kind of your background, how you got into this, what your company does, and how you help so many investors.
You bet. So ACUTRAQ started in 1998. And back then it was a lot of fax machines, phone calls. There wasn't a lot of technology or automation in the industry yet. A lot of courthouse searches, things of that nature. So Jeannie Baker, the owner, the founder, did this business by herself for about 10 years. So in 2008, I got a phone call. We had met and I was able to come on and be able to help really start growing the business and expand on the foundation that she had put in place. And she's one of, a master in this industry. So to be able to learn from her, and somebody that started when it was manual searches and has grown with technology, it's been amazing. So now we're 2019, we're a multi-million-dollar business, and we have 11 people in the office. That's our support team that deal with our clients and that make sure that they're taken care of and really cover all the bases when it comes to compliance with background screening and how it's supposed to be done. A lot of people don't understand that there's federal guidelines in place of how this stuff is supposed to operate.
Yeah. So back up a second. So when your boss, when she started the company, did she just see a window of opportunity, or did she have an aha moment that she got screwed over in a business and said, this is a need? How was that created?
What a great question, and what a great story. So
there always is, man.
She actually worked as a real estate agent and a property manager prior to this. Well, she had a really good career in property management, but then was hired by our local credit bureau there in Fayetteville, Arkansas, to work there. So through her time at the credit bureau, she kept getting calls. This is in the mid to late 90s, from 95 to 98. She kept getting phone calls from people wanting to be able to screen tenants. Well, at that time, there wasn't a lot of options for a home-based landlord or for a real estate agent or somebody like that to get a credit report. Everybody could get a local criminal report. People really weren't sure how to access national data at that time. But so in getting those calls, the need was there. So she talked to her husband. She said, I really think I can do this. She said, I know this industry, from property management to the credit bureau. And so she sent out 100 letters. And she sent out 100 letters to all the local real estate agents, property managers, anybody in that realm. And I can't remember exactly, but I want to say she got back six or seven. And that was all she needed. She said, these people are going to trust me to provide this service, and I can grow on this. And so she opened her business. At that time, it was called Tenant Searchers, because all we did was help people find, qualified tenants. So Tenant Searchers was from about 1998 until about 2005. And at that point in time, she was taking on a lot more employment screening. So we're a split between tenant screening and employment screening. But as that happened, she said, I have to provide accurate information all the way around, and I have to be able to track it. So that's where the name ACUTRAQ comes from. God gave her the spelling. It may be hard to spell for some people, but you'll see it all over the place someday. We're growing this brand. Yeah, but that's how the business came to be.
And it's interesting. While you were saying that, I was thinking, when she was probably doing this background check, people don't realize how easy we have it at the touch of a button, because that's back when, quote unquote, long distance calls were still around, right? I mean, you actually had to call, when you called another area code or another state, it was long distance. And I was in a meeting this weekend with Pete, and we were talking, we were doing some formulas on an Excel spreadsheet, and we were joking, saying how when we were in college, Excel didn't even exist. Like, what did we do? Like, how did you do formulas and stuff? And so you don't realize the advantages you have of the internet and the technology and everything. And to me, and I'm curious your thoughts, is it's kind of a double-edged sword with the internet, because there's probably a lot more fraud that goes on that people don't even realize when it comes to tenant and identity theft and that kind of stuff. Is that prevalent in the industry?
Unbelievable amount of fraud. I can tell you a couple of stories, and just to back up for a minute on Jeannie, you know, you guys, for instance, I mean, that many properties and you have less than a 1% eviction rate. A lot of people don't understand that there wasn't the automations and the things that we have now. So when Jeannie started this business, our full verification calls were the majority of how her landlords found qualified tenants. And as data became available, we were able to add that on and add value. But being able to talk to those tenants, you know, get those red flags, save them hopefully the headache that the last tenant went through. But yeah, with identity theft, the problem has gotten so out of hand. And let me tell you what we found. So usually we will find it by either something that comes back on the social trace, one of the identifiers there is wrong, or we get a death indicator on that social security number, meaning that the person that owned that social is now deceased. So how could this applicant have it?
So is there a central database where all this is held? I mean, you know, because are you going to different these governing agencies that you guys have to pull this from, or?
Criminal history is only by name and date of birth. There's no social involved in the actual criminal history part. So where the social comes into play is looking for that identity thief, but also looking for alias names. So there is a database, and it's a very vague database. That's the reason it doesn't show all the information of what we call the social trace, which is the best tool we have, the most inexpensive tool that we can do online. There's other versions. CBSV, for instance, consent-based social verification, still requires a wet signature. We're trying to get that changed. I was in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago, going through some of these guidelines and trying to figure out what we can do to help, because we have to have that verification automated, that an e-signature is verified and okay to use. But right now, the social trace is the only thing that we have. So you have the social trace and you have the consent-based verification. Social trace is what everybody uses. And so that database, let's say I pull your name and it shows a wrong address, because that social trace gives us alias names, addresses, and where that social security number was issued and when. So if something's wrong on there, you as a consumer can't really write anybody and say, hey, this was wrong, can you please change it? So some of that data is masked from the landlords, but it's how we use it to find out their criminal history, to see if there is something, one of those red flags on the social trace. And there's a number of different ways how somebody can find out that their identity was stolen. So for instance, if you run an application and then ACUTRAQ gets a call because it's on their credit report that their credit was ran, and they say, look, I'm in New Jersey, I've never applied for a property in Houston, Texas. We start going through the motions and we can find then, okay, this person submitted a fake social security card, a fake driver's license, and you can start looking, and they're getting so sophisticated now that twice, we didn't catch it and the property manager didn't catch it. And luckily that person called both times. The real person called before the property was leased. So we were able to do our investigations. They were able to give us all the information they have so that we can dig further. Anytime that happens, you need to have a company that you can communicate with. Because when an identity thief hits, you need to get rid of them as fast as possible with as less damage as possible. And what we found in the past, and we even had one with you guys that we tried to help, that we had caught. And Houston right now, if a property manager doesn't know that they've had an identity thief, then they're unaware, but they have. You know, they just didn't catch it.
Yeah. And I had a friend of mine one time, he was basically victim of that. And he went to, I forget what it was. He went to do something and his credit card got declined. And he was like, what's the deal? And it turned out he had rented like 4 properties. He bought a car. He had a bunch of medical, there was a lot of medical charges on his credit. And I don't know if that's why they do that, to charge off medical charges and stuff. And it was probably close to $200,000 total that he owed. And the biggest challenge, I mean, if that happened to me today, besides knowing you, I wouldn't really know where to go. I wouldn't even know who the first person to call to say, how do you untangle this? Is it a regular attorney? Like who would you call in that case?
That is a great question. And through the course of all this,
two great questions.
We have found out, through everything that we've been through with you guys and a few others. So what we found out is we started off by calling the Houston Police Department. And what we found was it takes about 3 weeks to get a detective assigned to the case to even begin investigating this identity thief. Wow. Where do you think the identity thief is at that point?
They're gone, man. They're in the wind.
They're on to the next city, and these career criminals are out here. This stuff happens, and I would like to say I'm just giving you guys analogies, but these are real stories, real things that have happened. So what that consumer needs to do as soon as they have found out that they believe they're a victim of identity thief is they need to contact the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And you can look that up online. Don't quote me, but I believe it may be CF, Consumer Financial PB.org or .gov, I'm sorry. So Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the initials for that .gov. If not, Google it and it's going to pop up. But that's going to be the only people that will be able to document it, be able to give you the next steps on what to do, because it's not easy when somebody does that to you and your financials are messed up, your identity's messed up. We have actually seen it. One of our Houston clients required them to upload a social security card to try to deter this.
Right.
And we have even seen the best fake social security cards we've ever seen. Sometimes I'll tell you who it was off air, and if they want to come on sometime and share that story, it was quite a dig trying to figure out who the real applicant was, because we had both people telling us they were the real applicant. We found out who the culprit was, but it took us about a week and a half to get to the bottom of it, because we didn't want to spook the wrong person.
Sure.
We generally wanted to help any way possible, but like I said, there's not really a lot you can do as a property manager. So when that happens, deny the person, work with the real person if they contact you, and do anything you can to help. But the main thing is get the identity thief away from your property, away from your people, move them on down the road. I wish there was more that a property manager could do in that situation, or a background screener could do, but the timeline is just too long to be able to.
And once they're in the property, all the dynamics change, and that's what people don't understand. It's not like the old days where you can just go and rip the doors off the hinges and pull them out. Right. Now they're in the property. Now they've got some rights. Right now you have to prove them, and now I don't know if that becomes a civil matter or how that works, but
it definitely, if you can prove that the person's involved in identity theft and the property is rented, in that case, the local authorities, you should be able to back off enough to put your case together. So when you contact local authorities, they can do it without scaring the person off. And you have to be able to prove it, because if that person is not involved in identity theft and you come in there and accuse them of it, it could open a whole nother can of worms. Yeah. That's why it's so important to have somebody like ACUTRAQ or another service like ours that you can call, dig deeper, and actually verify that information once you think the fraud has taken place.
So let's talk about screening the tenants, because I know that this was a huge point for us that, and maybe we swung full scale deflection the other way. But I know when Pete and I kind of started talking about what we wanted the perfect tenant to be, without even really knowing what the rules and laws were per se, before talking with you, but we said, this is what we want. Is that possible? And I remember you were like, yeah, it's strict. You're going to disallow a lot of people on the front end, but we had already lived the horror on the back end, so we didn't care. We learned right. An empty property with someone being in it not paying is worse than just an empty property. Right. And so, like you said, we have a 1% eviction rate, and that's because we're strict, man. We don't want people's problems, and it's. To us as an investor, it's hard. When I own a property and I get, my property management company, which I own, tells me they haven't found a good tenant for the property or whatever. And I'm thinking, can't you just take them? But that's the greedy side of me, right? That's the short play. The long play is sitting there going, okay, you know what? If I pick a good one, maybe they'll be in there 5-6 years, so the month or 2 months that it's vacant is minimal compared to, we used to have an 8-month average tenancy in those properties when Pete and I owned them. And our make ready costs were 3 times the amount. And the reason they were 3 times the amount is because when the tenants left, they love to take parting gifts with them. So they would take wiring, air conditioning units, stoves, took a toilet. I mean, took light bulbs. I mean, just the stuff that they would do, you know, just blows my mind. But I was playing in the wrong pool. That's what we got for putting bad credit okay. When you say bad credit okay, guess what you're going to get? People with shitty credit. I mean, that's just.
And then they go tell their friends.
Yeah, hey, go rent from these losers. They don't even care, you know? So yeah, exactly. So let's talk about screening and what you can ask, what you cannot ask, because, you know, I speak in front of a lot of investors. I speak in front of a lot of agents.
Right.
And everybody seems to, this is that gray area that they just want to talk real fast and skip through because they don't really know what you should and shouldn't do. And some agents, I talk to some agents and you know, they'll say, well, I just let the owner decide. I just stick my head in the sand and I let him decide. What is the best rule for something like that? If you know,
a lot of ground to cover there. The screening side of it, we all know, and going back to the suit, this is what they show up as when they're
yeah.
Hi, Mr. Landlord. I want to pay 6 months rent.
Yeah. I'm the best guy you've ever met. We're going to be best friends.
Pets.
Yeah.
No, I've never been in trouble.
Yeah.
Then you send it to your screening party and they come back where you get the real story of what they've been through and where they've been and all of that stuff. And the screening process starts with the application fee. Another thing that a lot of landlords will do is they don't want to do anything to qualify that applicant up front.
Yeah.
The applicant needs some skin in the game.
Absolutely.
So for instance, a lot of my landlords they generally, people think the landlord's just trying to make money off that. For if renters and people that lease are listening to this, the best thing you can do is go through the process that your landlord wants you to go through, that the property management company has put in place. If it has an application fee, don't call them and tell them how you cannot afford. Got a call there. How you can't afford to pay the application fee, because what that tells them is I live check to check. I can't.
That's got no money, man. Yeah.
Right. So put that in place.
Can I just say something real quick on that? And I think it's important that, you know, at some point, I think as an investor, as a property manager, where has it turned to be a bad word to make money on a product that you offer? Why should you do it for zero or lose money? And people say like, oh, you shouldn't make money on applications. Show me where that's written. Why should I? Is my time not worth something? When you go to work, do they say, hey, you should work the first 30 minutes free because you should? No.
Right.
I think it's you know, it's that talk that people don't like to talk about. I think it's fair. If you're providing a fair service for what you do, whether you're an owner of your own properties or your property manager, I don't personally see anything wrong with making a return off of my time or my staff's time to do it. And much to your point, like you said, the whole application like ours is online. They can't even get to step 2 until they input their credit card information and check the box and do everything. It's not, we won't even talk to them. It's not even an option. And when, you know, I don't know if people still take paper applications. I'm guessing they do, but you know, again, going into the new age of the world, if somebody says, I don't have access to a computer, or I don't have access to online, I got to go, that's kind of weird. Everyone in the world does except you. That's
right.
A red flag, right?
Right. You're trying to rent a $2,000 a month house, but you don't own a computer or a cell phone. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm sorry. So go ahead. So we're talking about the agents and everything.
Yeah, and believe it or not, we do get that where people will say, well, I don't have access. And I tell my landlords, you know, I don't know. They may not really have access, or maybe they're trying to get by the background check. Think about, you know, why would somebody go to all that trouble to tell you these things and their whole life story? But anyway, so going back to things that you can ask, the application, put a list of questions on there, use that as a pre-qualifier, you know, and they're going to lie on there. That's the reason it's important to make sure you have some way to contact those landlords and employers. But the things of, do you pay your rent on time? Do you have credit delinquencies? Do you have animals? The things that if they lie about, it says clearly at the bottom, you know, if anything is misrepresented, your application will be denied or the lease will be terminated. So even putting those questions in there, the things you cannot ask about are familial status, disabilities, race, you know, nowadays gender, leave all these things out.
Right.
Don't do anything like that. Stick to
Right.
the facts, the things that you can back up. So when you ask them, do you have any credit delinquencies, back it up on the credit report. If they tell you no, and then they have nothing but collections, why would you even look any further at that? You have a liar first. And so what kind of tenancy is this going to be? The thing is so many landlords want to start listening to the stories and the things that this person's been through. You're running a business. And like you said a second ago, your time is valuable. When you take time to process that application, some people, it may take you 30 minutes to look over the different variables of what's going on with this applicant. That time is valuable. I know your time is, my time is. You should be compensated for that. So, but yeah, the things that you can ask for, make sure it's facts that you can back up. Nothing that's opinion, nothing that just because you feel that way, but questions that you can back up with facts on the background screening report.
What are your thoughts on, I get a lot of conversations about credit, basing the determination on credit score. And I've heard that that's kind of a very slippery slope with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So can you touch on that a little bit? I'd like to get an understanding.
Sure can. So with credit scores and the Fair Credit Reporting Act, HUD, everybody together does not want you to just use the credit score alone in your model. So if you say, I don't pass anybody above 550, the chances of getting in trouble may be slim, of getting caught doing that. But per best practices, don't screen by just the credit score. So if you're going to screen, whenever you're checking your boxes and denying that applicant, don't check a box that says credit score was too low. Check a box that says they have credit delinquencies. They have past due collections, things of that nature that are facts on the credit report that have nothing to do with the score. I would have taken you, but you had 8 out of 10 collections on your trade lines. Yes, that's going to negatively affect the score, but that way the score was not the sole purpose. You did look at the big picture. And the reason that comes into play, let's say somebody, maybe student loans are the only thing that they've been delinquent on and are pulling down their credit score. You may have a great renter there. They're just ticked off at whatever happened at college and they don't want to pay their student loans, or they can't afford the student loans. So that's the first thing that goes. But they're wanting you to look at the big picture. In the same way with criminal history. We all know HUD's guidelines, I believe late 2016, they tell you now, please take the full picture into your decision. Just because this person had one crime, maybe a marijuana charge 7 years ago, if it's not dangerous, don't hold it against that person and not place them in housing because they messed up one time and they've never been in trouble since. Take that time frame of how long has it been since they've been, since they were arrested or convicted, all the variables, what type of crime it was. Is it a crime that they can't live near schools, or they can't, and what's really unfortunate, because in the past, HUD said, treat everybody the same. If you deny one person for criminal history, deny everybody for criminal history. Now they're asking you to kind of be the liaison between that and look at this and make decisions that I know you and I aren't comfortable, making, but they want you to look at that big picture. So it's something as property managers, you just need to be thinking about when you're placing tenants, but, just to stay current with what's going on and what HUD is asking as well.
So let me ask you this, just kind of one point before we go on. The credit score, I was told at one time that if the denial, like when you get denied for a credit card, right? If I get denied for a credit card, which I have when I was younger, when you get denied for a credit card, you get an envelope with about 30 pages of documentation that, all you look is the first page that says you've been denied and you throw it away, right? But those pages are things that you have to have. My understanding is if you deny someone saying, I only take a 650 credit score and you are under 650, you have to send that type of documentation to them, and it is different documentation for different scores. Is that correct?
No. So the way it works with tenant screening is you guys have it, and that's something really good to cover, because if somebody has a background screening company like ACUTRAQ and they're not providing that letter, or they're charging you for that letter, switch companies. That is the most important part of the process. They need to be providing you the adverse action letter that has all that verbiage in there, so you as the landlord do not have to worry about it. So what happens when somebody's denied, even if it's based on the score, But again, ours, check past credit delinquencies or something like that. We don't even have a box. If they type in that the credit score was too low, they have to manually type that in. We're not going to give them an option to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing that needs to be included in that is the credit score, though. Per the FCRA, that applicant has a right to know why they were denied and what their credit score was. So we include that in that letter. Then below that, it should have the person's, the company that ran the information. So it should have ACUTRAQ, or in their case, somebody else, whoever the screener is, so that if there's a dispute, that person can call us and let us know, hey, I need to dispute something on this report that's wrong. That is the most important part of the process, because if you do not give somebody the chance to dispute that, you will get sued at some point. You may have gone 15 years.
Yep.
But you will get sued at some point if you're not sending that letter.
It's so funny when I talk to investor groups. I don't care if it's 5 people or it's 500 people that are investors or agents. You'd be amazed just at that word adverse action letter. They don't even know what it means. They're like, what is that? I'm like, well, when you deny someone an application, what do you do with it? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, interesting. I'm like, it's not if, it's when. Like you said, I mean, you are going to get sued. And I tell the agents, they're like, well, the owner does the denial. And I'm like, well, if you're the one licensed by the state here in the state of Texas, you're the licensed professional, and you are somehow wrapped up into this.
Right.
You think that you're not going to be wrapped up with something affecting your license because you just put your head in the sand and go, well, that's the owner. The owner did it. I'm like,
right.
And again, going back to I talk about agents is, I tell them, I go, there's things that when you pull credit. So if you're an agent and you pull credit on a tenant or applicant, the applicant, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jason, the applicant is giving you, the agent, the authority to see your background and your information, not the owner. So I tell that, because we have owners that say, well, I want to see the background. They say, well, we can't give that to you. Well, it's my house. It's your house, but it's our business. And our business is what's allowed to see into this person's background, not you. So we cannot give you that information. And they're like, but it's my house. I'm like, you own the shell. We own the business that's running inside of that shell. And that's and agents don't understand that. And I'm like, you cannot just give the owner that information. That's correct, right?
That is fair and accurate. And just to go back on what they're sending. So also below the adverse action letter, per the federal guidelines, they're required to get the summary of rights, which tells them what their rights are when their credit report is pulled. So if your CRA is not providing those, your background screener is not providing those, get a new company that sees that as a priority. So going back to sharing that report, this is something that comes up on nearly every day with so many homeowners and so many property management companies, and them being the bridge there. So when that background report is ran, the credit bureau, and again, this all comes from the credit bureau. Criminal history, is public data for the most part, but when you're using it on a consumer report, now it becomes part of that consumer report. You have to let them know when they're denied based on that information. The credit report is pulled by the property manager in most cases, or a real estate agent. That is the end user. There are no two end users where I pull it and then I give it to the homeowner. The person that pulls it is the end user. Everybody else is considered a third party. And that report is not to be shared with any third party sources at all. It's for a one-time use only, and for the purpose of the end user using it. That means the real estate agent or the property management company. So what you can do, the homeowner needs to be involved.
Sure. Bring
them in, give them a call, let them know what's on the report. You can bring them into that decision. They cannot have a physical copy of it.
And also there's things that you can't tell them, right? Like you can tell them, you can tell them what industry they're in, but not what they do. I know there's a lot of specifics of things that you cannot tell them. And I forget all of them, but I know there's a litany of things that you could get in trouble if let's say the guy's in the oil business, right? And he's a CEO, and the owner says, well, I got fired from the oil company, so I don't want this guy to live there. Well, that I don't think you can say that, right?
If it's on our background screening report, you can cover just about everything on there. You don't want to give them the social.
Yeah.
You don't want to give them the date of birth or age.
Or race, right? I mean, none of the...
Even race is irrelevant, correct. Yeah, I wouldn't share any of that. what you can go over with them are the credit trade lines, criminal history.
Facts. Just the facts, right?
Facts.
Yeah.
Even the score. If the homeowner, I wouldn't even really let them make a decision off the score. Go by the credit trade lines, criminal history, eviction history, and the landlord reports. They can share that information with that homeowner verbally or in person. At no time can that homeowner leave with a copy of the report.
Yeah.
Or at no time can that report be emailed to somebody. Emailing those reports is a breach of compliance. The email is not secure. So if you go emailing credit reports and background screening reports to each other, those can be intercepted. That person's identity can be stolen. So the homeowners, the best way to explain it to them is if they were applying for a property, they would want their information kept safe as well. If we give the next person their information and they go to Starbucks and set it down, now it has Empire Industries' name at the top of it. It has ACUTRAQ's name at the top of it. And this person's identity is getting stolen from the last known people to pull that background check.
So what are the penalties when somebody, if let's say you're responsible for a breach of data and they track it back and go, you were the last person. So an agent emails it or a husband emails it to his wife, their two investors, partners. What are the penalties for that?
Well, let me tell you this, there's no cap on lawyer fees. So it could put your company under. We've seen lawsuits in positions with people that we've known in the industry, companies that are no longer here anymore because they could not simply fight that type of lawsuit. Then you're going to battle with insurance companies and everything else over what was, it's nasty and it can all be avoided. But yeah, that's when there's a breach of compliance, get ready. And the thing about it is if Amazon is open to being breached, all of us are open to being breached.
Absolutely.
So have your policies and procedures in place of what, your privacy policies, all of that stuff is imperative. You show up to court without that stuff, whoever's identity was stolen will own your business. That's not a scare tactic or anything else. It's
true. It's true. I mean, we made it our policy that we make the determining factor. We have our qualifications, right? They're on the website. They're everywhere. We tell the owner these are our qualifications. And then we don't include the owner in the process. And part of that discussion for multiple reasons. Number one is speed. Sometimes the owner's out of country, they're out of state. Then they want to have a discussion, but they're discussing a subject that they don't even know. Like they haven't had fair housing training. They don't know what the law is. They're like, well, what do you think? Do you think he's going to keep his job? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just telling you the facts. Based on the facts, he qualifies. And I know that, what we do is we're very strict, but we don't include the owner in the process at all. We tell them, look, you hired us as professionals. We are looking out for your best interest. We're going with the first one who's qualified that fits the qualifications, but we back it up with a 12-month tenant guarantee. So if that tenant punches out or they get evicted in 12 months, we bear the cost of that. So we tell the owners, like, look, we understand that there's some concern going, well, it's easy for you guys to say you're not paying the mortgage or you don't have to pay to release it. So we said, okay, well, we'll put our money where our mouth is. And, we have a 1% eviction rate. But the reality is when you manage 1,000 properties, that 1% starts getting bigger. So someone is going to be on that. And I tell owners, I go, look, someone is going to be on that 1%. It's just statistics. For the ones that do, we'll put our money where our mouth is and we'll cover the cost. So at least
amazing.
It's kind of like, let us do what we know how to do. You hired us for a reason. And because of that started us doing lease onlys for people when people just say, look, I don't want you to manage it, but you guys got a great system for background checks and all that. Can you just do a lease only for us? And we're like, yeah, because we have a system that works very well. And the reason it works very well is we don't allow outside people involved in it, and I'm sure that you've probably delved into that many, many times with owners and property managers.
If we want to get real about it, the successful property managers operate that way. And I can tell though, because if I call one of my clients and I say, I've got an applicant, he's wanting to speak to you. I don't want to give him your information though, until you okay it. They're really upset about the application process and everything you're requiring. If my client says, you know what, tell them there's 1,000 other people that'll rent to them that may have a process that suits their needs.
Absolutely.
I know right away, man, I love it. He has a process. He's not deviating from it. Then I get the ones that say, oh my goodness, give me their number. Let me call them right away and see if I can salvage it. working way too hard. I mean,
Well,
have your process in place and stick to it.
Well, and the problem is you can look, I can talk myself into anyone being perfect and an angel with, well, I guess that could have happened. That could have happened to anyone. Okay,
Right.
You know what? You'll be fine. You promise? I promise. Okay. And so we can talk ourselves into anything looking great. And the reality is every time we have deviated from a policy or procedure, it never works in our favor. I've never once said, man, I'm glad I deviated from that. I'm glad I didn't go down that road, you know, like I've never had that happen, you know. It's like every time you learn that lesson, you're like, okay, I won't do that again. And I just did it again.
But how do you do that with owners? That's the thing people can't get with their mindset, is to be able to make that shift with their owners or with the applicants, because like we were talking earlier, they're so scared they're going to miss a leasee, or they're going to make an owner mad, you know. To change that power and that control to where you have it, that's the hardest part for people to do, is make that switch in their head to be able to own that.
Well, you know, I think a lot of it is either operating from fear or operating from a position of, this is a business, this is how we run it, these are our policies, these are our procedures. If it's not working, then change the model, right? And I think that's the biggest challenge is, and we look, you know us, we don't deviate at all. When somebody says, we say, look, it's either thumbs up or thumbs down. That's all we know, because number one, that's going to keep us out of lawsuits. It keeps you out of a lot of back and forths going. And again, that's not what we do. I don't know if the laws have changed recently. That's what you guys do. That's what you know. I don't want to learn the laws, you know? So it's like, to me, it's like, I don't need to know everything specifically of current, but you do. And that's why we hire you. And, you know, whether you're an owner that you own one property or three properties, or, you know, you know, part-time or your property management company, I would say that the best thing you could do for yourself, for your properties, for your investment, and for the tenants is just stick to your rules, stick to your guns. You know, the thing is somebody living in that property causing you problems and headache, if you've never been in that situation, like I know Pete and I have many, many times back in the old days, that is a horrible feeling, because you're like, man, you know, and the biggest challenge I can tell you, Jason, is when you think you know, everybody starts off the relationship with the tenant on a great note. Like, we're going to be great. This is going to be friends. Maybe you can barbecue. Our kids go to the same school. And then when things start oscillating and maybe going south, now you feel emotionally taken advantage of, because you entrusted this person and you like them. The reality is you never treated it like a business. You didn't have policies and procedures. We explain to people, listen, this is an agreement. This is what you are going to do. This is what we are going to do. This is when you are going to pay your rent. And if you don't, this is what happens here. And a lot of people, they don't understand that. It's like, look, you may scare them off. I would rather scare them off on the front end before I have to do another make ready and a vacancy and the stress than deal with it in the middle of it. Because, you know, Jason, I could tell you the sleep that you've been able to inject back into my life by knowing that we have good tenants. You know, I mean, I can tell you the sleepless nights of having bad tenants. And people, unless you've been in that situation and you walk that walk and you realize I knew I made the mistake. I personally made it, and I did it again. And I'm like, I have nobody to blame but myself. I should have stuck to my guns. And we don't have that problem.
Not only that, you know, the ones that understand the whole process needs to be outsourced. You as the property manager, you don't want to be talking to, I mean, people say, well, I want to talk to that landlord, engage their voice. Get a process that has you not included, so you can't be accused of any discrimination or anything like that. That's the easiest way to keep yourself out of lawsuits, is outsource it. Outsource your background checks, outsource your pet screening, so you're not making those decisions. There's so many things now that you can take the liabilities off and lay your head down at night knowing you're not getting a call from somebody's lawyer the next morning.
Absolutely, because, you know, we were talking earlier about the adverse action. Who do you think is the one that's going to get a lawyer? The one who gets accepted or the one who gets denied?
Every time.
Probably the one who gets denied. And what's the first thing the lawyer is going to say is, let me see your adverse action letter. And they're going to go, I didn't get one. They're going to say, interesting. Now let's start seeing what we have here, you know?
And then they show up to your company and they say, show us your policies and procedures for denial. And you go, we don't have any.
They're going to go, interesting, you know? And then it's a Pandora's box, man.
Right.
Yeah. And even if you have one or two properties and you just have a couple, it doesn't matter. You are running a business. And that's what I just pounded into these investors' heads. it's a business, man. You have got to run it like a business. The biggest mistake we have is that we live in a house and we have a house as an investment property, and we don't equate that as a business because we go, well, it's a house. I lived there at one point, so just renting it out, it's pretty simple. Right. It's a whole business. Policies, procedures, structure. You got to have all that. And I mean, that was the reason we created the Ultimate Survival Handbook. Pete and I created a manual to show people how to run their properties like a business for the single investor, because it just makes sense. And if you want it, you can go to my website, selfmanagemyproperty.com. But the thing is it's just so important to know, to have a Jason Waggoner on your team, because you don't know what the laws are. You don't, service animals, therapy pets. Do you deal into that now? We just recommend petscreening.com. Yeah. They have it's a third-party source just like us. So you're not involved in that process of saying, is this really a service animal? And I'm going to get sued for even trying to figure out what's going on here. Yeah. What can I ask? There. What can I not ask? What am I allowed to see? What's wrong with you? Don't. So like with Empire, just like you guys, put it on your application. This is required if you have pets. This is my process. If you don't like it, don't rent here. Absolutely. That's capitalism, baby. You don't have to rent here. We want you. We're going to take care of you. But, we have two clients. We have the tenant and we have the owner. And we have to do that balance. But our fiduciary responsibility is to the owner to have a profitable business that runs. And you can't do that if you're not having policies and procedures and you're winging it. And you got to call that owner and go, man, I went off my gut. I thought he'd be good. He seemed like a good guy. The owner's going to go, well, did you follow your procedure that when I signed up with you, you said you had all these procedures? No, I just thought I'd do you a favor and get someone in the property because it was getting kind of, stale out there. And I wanted to get someone in. They're going to go, well, shit, now you may put me in a worse position now. You didn't do me any favors. What about even with a real estate agent? When you were talking about it, having that power, the ability to make those decisions yourself as the property manager, let's say you're a real estate agent or a property manager and you're including your owner in that and you're looking over the information and they say, well, I don't know, they could be a good renter. They could. Maybe we should take them. What do you think? Maybe we should. Maybe we should. You both agree maybe we should. When it goes south, who's that homeowner going to blame for making that decision? Finger pointing, man. You said. You told me. I just own the property. That's why I hired you. I can tell you that. I hear that all the time from agents. They're like, I don't know why these owners blame me. I'm like, you held their hand through the process. That's why. Yeah, exactly. And the worst part is just saying, I'm just going to send it to the owner and let him decide. It's like, so you're putting your whole license and your livelihood on the line off of an investor that maybe, we have investors that don't even live in the U.S. They don't know fair housing laws. They don't know Texas property code. They don't know these things. So you're basically putting your livelihood on the line to someone that lives out of state, out of country, and assuming that they have experience and they have knowledge. Isn't that kind of why they hired you? Because you said you were a professional and you said you knew what you were doing. So they kind of cross those lines when it's convenient, I've noticed. And, in training people and your staff and like we're talking about changing that mindset, it's really not as easy it's not as hard, than people think to change that mindset. It's the verbiage you use. So when somebody calls in, let them know. We offer an application to everybody that wants one. It's right there on our website. But if you don't like our application process, you don't have to rent here. Do you know how that changes the control of what they're fixing to pick your application process apart because they don't like this or that, knowing every company has a different process? Yeah. And those people will go to every company and pick it apart. Well, let them go to those other companies and let them know this is our process. I understand what you're going through, but I have a process. Everybody's treated fairly. Here's our application. If you feel like you meet these criteria, feel free to apply. We offer one to everybody that asked for one, but we have a process that we don't deviate from. That's the easiest way to handle those conversations. I love it, man. I love it. So Jason, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, they want to find out about ACUTRAQ, how do they do that? Very easily. You can call us anytime during normal business hours or leave a message after 479-439-9174, or they can send us an email at customercare@ACUTRAQ.com, ACUTRAQ. So customercare@ACUTRAQ.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help out. We know that you guys have enough hats to wear, so get that stuff off your plate. Yeah. And you guys are national, right? You guys can do it anywhere. Is that correct?
We are national. We're in all the lower 48 states now. We also just launched last week. So, the ones that use it, if they hear me today, you will be some of the first round of phase 1, but go to tenantscreeningforlandlords.com. It's for real estate agents. It's for home-based landlords.
Yeah.
You get everything that the property managers get, an application and a full background check with credit, criminal, eviction, current landlord, and employer. You guys have access to the same thing now. So tenantscreeningforlandlords.com.
I mean, talk about buying time, right? You're buying time back of hours. You're buying time back of stuff that you don't even know what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and you're buying back that time. So that's great. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can go to my Facebook group, Landlord Survival Group. We keep it a closed group, and it's really good with a lot of very, very intelligent investors on there talking about challenges and trials and tribulations. We also create our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com. There we have products and content we give away. I've got the Ultimate Survival Handbook there. And we have, I don't know how many shows we have. What is this? I think we're into a year already doing this. So we've got a lot of shows on iTunes. So if you go to Landlord Survival on iTunes, you can see it there. And if you want to talk to us at Empire, you can find us EmpireIndustriesLLC.com or Empire Industries on Facebook. I'm pretty much all over Facebook, so people can find me some way. And you guys have a Facebook site too, right, Jason?
Yes, ACUTRAQ background screening. It's spelled weird, ACUTRAQ. Go like and follow, keep up to date with what we're doing. So.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I know you'd mentioned that you've got this tenant thing, so that's pretty cool. Maybe we can put that on my website for you and stuff to get some traction.
We've got it in the works. We've got you a link coming, so I'll keep you posted on that. We're in the works to make sure that can happen with you and a couple of our other trusted vendors. NARPM is just a great resource. So
yeah, it's awesome. It is. Well, Jason, hey man, thanks so much. And everyone watching, I appreciate it. If you can, share it, review it, like it. I appreciate that. Again, we do this to help investors because there was no one there to help us. So thanks everyone for watching. And Jason, I'll talk to you later, buddy. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Steve. Have a good one.
You too.
This has been the Landlord Survival Show. Join us next time for more of what the gurus don't tell you about owning rentals. And for even more, find us on Facebook.
Brought to you by Empire Industries Property Management. Built for investors, by investors. For more information about this show, visit our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, home of the Ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook.